Hi, good morning. This is a Bitcoin morning brief, and we have girl swag today. Full disclosure that this is the first time I've ever worn a headband, but we got a Bitcoin going on today. Thank you, Hipsy. So some girl crypto swag. All right, gentlemen who I don't think are wearing a headband today. We have Rodolfo, Giacomo, and Tonan today, who is still laughing at me. That is fine. I will start with you, Rodolfo. How was your weekend?
It was fun. It's a good weekend.
Sweet.
Went to a gun show.
Nice. There's gonna be some topics coming up where I think we should focus on that one. We will. I won't say anything. Giacomo, where are you? You always have the best new backgrounds.
No, this is the same. You see the Beanie Babies.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I just changed the angle so it looks new.
Nice.
I'm fine, thanks.
Nice. And Tone, you're jetting today.
Yes, I got a flight to catch. Hopefully it will depart. There's a giant rainstorm going through New York, and I'm off to Vegas. I will be speaking at Chain Exchange Conference that kind of starts today, but all the speakers, it's like they have some workshops or something. So I don't have to be there till tomorrow, but I'll be in Vegas if my plane departs on time around 6 p.m. tonight.
All right. Hey, careful there. All right. Well, yeah. Okay. All right. Let's start this one. So you don't miss your plane. All right. Is that on? Yes, it is. So IBM and Maersk blockchain platform adds 92 clients as part of global launch. We had a little fun talking about this one prior. Giacomo said already, there's a bit of proof of news. We have not, though, talked about a lot of these blockchain projects in the past for quite a while. So this is a new one, and we have IBM, some of the large players. They are doing a bit of a different take on it, putting it on IBM's platform. And just again, you know, I wanted to bring this one up because still, when you talk to devs and consensus and, you know, digital chamber of commerce here in DC, everybody still believes that voting and supply chain are the best case examples of how blockchain is going to be successful in the future. So Rodolfo, Giacomo's already laughing. Rodolfo, so therefore I will start with you. Is this new news? Tell us what's going on. Catch us up to speed. Is any innovations happen?
I think Giacomo really called it. You know, it's another proof of PR here. As usual, they ran out of things to do with blockchain, so you know they want to sort of say it's for these big projects like voting and supply chain. They're not really using blockchain when you actually look at the story. It's just a database. And if you guys are not familiar with this, you don't want to use IBM for anything. They can't even do payroll in Canada. I think the government here spent like $4 billion on a payroll system that has been broken for, I think, like 5 years now. So IBM can't even use a database. Can you imagine if they even try to do something with blockchain? It's just another sort of, you know, PR thing.
Thanks, Giacomo. Please chime in. Proof of news,
Yeah.
but also,
Yeah.
is there anything innovative?
So if you really want to play devil's advocate and try to extract what could be interesting in these projects, they are talking about technology, voting, supply chain, are technology with some hard problems to solve since decades. Like it's difficult to coordinate different parties, it's difficult to interoperate between different digital standards. So there are a lot of effort to do in the fields of automatization of trade contracts. Is there any value into a platform that digitally automatize trade contracts? Yes, there is some value. Is there any value in standardization of languages between different parties in order to interoperate better database? Yes, there is value. Is there value in some kind of digital, maybe cryptographical authentication of things like digital signature on documents? Yeah, especially in the regulated markets, there could be some value in certified, authenticated documents. So, is anything of what I said somehow related with blockchain, strictly speaking? Not at all. Not really at all. There is nothing, literally nothing, in the technological and social and economical revolution started with the paper of Satoshi Nakamoto that can somehow impact any of these directly. maybe indirectly, if you call this kind of experiment blockchain, you get more money and more attention. And so maybe you can deliver more that you could deliver if you just call them very boring digital automatization of trade experiment. So maybe I'm skeptical about that, but maybe the proof of news, the proof of PR can make some of these legacy technology gradualistic evolution going faster. Probably not, because when you base your PR and your use upon confusion, so you start to parasite a hype instead of trying to be true with what you're doing. You create confusion externally in order to get more visibility, but also internally. Like how many managers of these companies and of IBM itself are very confused about blockchain because of the cognitive dissonance they have to maintain in order to promote their stuff as blockchain. So when you want to confuse, when you need to be confused and ambiguous in order to get some attention and to get some visibility, it's unlikely that your result will be great, even if you get more money and more exposition to the media and so on. So yeah, everything here just basically, I mean, we could have something the other way around. Some of these new technology evolutions, like into automatization of trading, could maybe in someday in the future be useful for Bitcoin-related smart contracts as well, but not really the other way around. So of course, since I debated with Peter Todd for the 100th time, you could use the word blockchain to indicate any kind of digital authority, and it becomes an anti-word, but in that case, everything is blockchain. So yeah, it's fine.
Thanks, Giacomo. And Tone, what did you think of the piece? And also to take it into the finance realm, if we didn't call it blockchain, do you still think that potentially this is a good business move?
I mean, it's a good business move for IBM. They're probably raking in the money, and it's unclear whether they will or won't be able to, fix their database issue for these companies. Just like it was a really good move for R3 to get all of those banks and pay them a bunch of money up front to build their thing, and we haven't really heard much from R3. But basically, I'll just close off with Leah. If you just go back to that story and you go and just read the last paragraph, the very last paragraph in the story, it kind of explains what it all is, but not from like the next quote, the ability to get better access. Just that sentence from the main CEO involved in the project.
The ability to get better access to more real-time data, to have better visibility end-to-end, to be able to connect one-to-many in a more efficient and effective way, makes the cost of getting that information lower, makes the ability to manage your own business better, and it makes the ability to service your customers that much stronger.
Now, all of that sounds great, especially if you're running like a global shipping business with a lot of logistics. The thing is, not a single word in that whole sentence has anything to do with blockchain. Like, blockchain is censorship-resistant value transfer to prevent censorship. And there is nothing there that needs that property. But it's great. I'm happy that they're going to be able to do all of those things in that quote.
Yeah, it's all BS. I mean, it's just a marketing press release.
Yeah, and to that point, absolutely. The quote you had me read is quite vague. I didn't see anything in the article that actually tied it to how that was going to be implemented. So yes, but moving on. So Bitcoin investors eye Turkey as lira plummets 20%. I'm in Washington, D.C. So let's talk about this one. Pretty much as the title says, lira is slipping. We're in a bit of a trade war, but internally they are in a serious economic crisis. But what's very interesting about this story is that the volume of Bitcoin is dramatically increasing in terms of volume. But also what I found interesting was that it's local exchanges. So Giacomo, you're closest to this country, so I will turn it to you first. What do you think? And also, do you think that this could actually be a good case example of how Bitcoin can work in economically fragile situations?
So I'm closer to this country geographically, but also historically, because my country was Italy was a country using the valuation of money a lot, and the previous money before euro was lira. So it was exactly the same, even in name, also being a very shitty kind of currency. So yeah, it could be a good spot for Bitcoin when your legal tender money crashes in value and you have a lot of problem for debasement, inflation, and eventually in few months probably hyperinflation. That's a good spot for Bitcoin, especially if there are related side effects like ATMs closing in the streets and bank runs and stuff like that. The problem, just like Rodolfo said in his Twitter, maybe we are going to show later, but the problem is that you should use this kind of events in order to understand why Bitcoin is needed, and you should get some Bitcoin before your country gets into this kind of trouble, because after is really a little of help. Right now, if you are in Turkey right now and you are suffering consequences of inflation and maybe soon hyperinflation and other kinds of problem because of the shitty national currency, trying to get into Bitcoin to solve this problem after the fact is tricky. Is really tricky. This is a very similar topic to people in Cyprus when they closed down the banks, or in Greece. Like everybody was like, now people in Greece will use Bitcoin. Yeah, sure, except that they cannot buy Bitcoin because their bank account is frozen and all their money is gone for now. So the problem is that these are very good historical proof of concepts for Bitcoin, but they are not very useful for people in that situation right now. They would be useful as a learning process for people in other countries in the future in order to avoid something like this.
Thank you, Giacomo. Rodolfo, I pulled up your tweet. I'm going to read it really quickly. Remember to buy Bitcoin before your country's currency collapse. You get a lot less afterwards. Can you explain what you thought here? And also, if I can ask a second question to it, do you think that it will be utilized potentially as a medium of exchange or store of value in how people are thinking about it or should be thinking about it?
So, I mean, Giacomo really got to the crux of it. It was perfect. So, I personally, I grew up in Brazil at the end of the military dictatorship, and we had since then, I think, 3 or 4 currencies that they changed the name and killed a few zeros, right? So the problem is that, you know, there is a good chunk of the population that is too poor to be able to take advantage of this, right? That is a certain reality. And, you know, and they're also not as affected in the way that people think they are. The people who truly pay the price for most of these kinds of the devaluations and debating of the currencies is it's sort of like the lower middle class all the way to sort of like the people who are starting to make it, right? These are people who have some savings, and these are people who actually have businesses, and it's very hard for them to take their wealth and keep their wealth when this sort of stuff happens, right? Because if you are a government official, you're often not caught buying dollars, gold, or something else, and you can't really take gold out of your country in an airplane. So Bitcoin really hits that spot perfectly, right? I think we have to accept the fact that Bitcoin, it's not going to help the most sort of poor people initially, but it will help the class of people that does have some money to retain their wealth. And as things calm down, they will have to buy things, hire people, and do other things. So that will sort of trickle down a bit. So that's sort of like where I sit on this. And, a lot of people, as the country already collapsed, sort of go into this and say, hey, Bitcoin's great. Bitcoin's going to save your country. Bitcoin's going to save you. It's already too late when we get there. And that's why I think we really need to sort of like start pushing this, that, you know, if your country sort of is starting to look like it's getting shabby on the exchange rate, you know what, like, be smart. You know, buy some Bitcoin, buy some dollar, buy some gold, you know, start retaining your wealth in other means. The reality is that, you know, because of capital controls, you're not going to be allowed to buy dollar. And if you are allowed to buy dollar, you're going to have to buy dollar on the government's exchange rate. Like in Argentina and Brazil it was. So, and those exchange rates might as well not do it, right? So Bitcoin really is the only way that it can get around capital controls. It's beautiful for that. And if you are in the European continent, it's very easy for you to simply cross a border walking with your passport legally. You know, go buy Bitcoin in another country, come back and resell, and sort of like like it's done in any sort of like environment where you have a dictator. That's kind of what the Erdogan is, anyways. So yeah, so that's sort of where I stand. I think that, you know, people need to realize that we need to do this before, you know, it's too late.
Interesting. Thanks, Rodolfo. Tone, what did you think about this piece? And do you think it's going to be good for Bitcoin?
Yeah, I just got notified that my flight to Vegas at 3 p.m. is now a flight to San Francisco tomorrow at 9 a.m. instead, and then a connector to Vegas.
Oh,
So, which is a problem. So I got to deal with
Are you
this.
saying you want this to be another 6-hour-long marathon? Because, you know, we got stuff to do, man.
Yeah, well, looks like I'm no longer going to Vegas, unfortunately. I don't even know when I'm speaking, but that's a problem. Anyway,
Ouch.
yeah, so the Turkish lira. Yeah, no, we've been talking about the Turkish lira going back to the World Crypto Network days from like 2 years ago. And everyone kept saying how Turkey is going to lead Bitcoin to the next level. And I said, no, it's a total joke that it would do that because there's just not enough like capital there that cares, right? Like the capital in Turkey is either at the elite level and they have other ways of moving their money where Bitcoin doesn't matter as much, or it's basically in that zone that Rodolfo was talking about the middle class. But I see that more for Europe. I see that more for like the Cyprus events, the Greek events, if the Italian banks have problems, because then the entire European common currency is in total jeopardy. And that's the one that's going to really drive Bitcoin to the next level. I just don't see this being that big of a deal. And I remember saying it like 3 years ago, and almost once a year I say this, and everyone always gets upset. But in reality, I just don't see Turkey leading the charge. There's just not enough capital there to make all that much of a difference. Just like Venezuela and just like some of the other smaller countries, just not enough wealth there. You really need to look at the Central Europe. You need to look at America, maybe even Canada. You got to look at wealthier nations for when their citizens start to worry about their currencies. That speculation is going to drive Bitcoin to, you know, the 100K and above level.
Thanks, Stone. Maybe you'll have some more courses for people trading. And just to follow up to you gentlemen, it is very interesting as it's a different case example for sure from Venezuela as well as from Iran. Because as Rodolfo said, you can move across the borders with potentially suitcases full of cash. No, but you're saying that just given that it's in Europe. So I do find this interesting. Rodolfo, it looked like you had one last follow-up.
I think we really arrived at a point now where Bitcoin is bigger than many economies. And it's not about how Turkey can help Bitcoin. It's about how Bitcoin can help Turkey. See, we are like the Bitcoin space now is just so big that unless we're talking like Tone said, you know, a country with a very big economy can make a massive difference in Bitcoin. But I think now Bitcoin can help these countries, and these countries are essentially irrelevant to Bitcoin in the sense that they would move the market too much.
I completely agree. And having worked a lot extensively in sub-Saharan Africa, I mean, there's definitely a lot of countries beyond just inflation that I think, to your point, could utilize this to help them out. Now, the big story, well, Vijay, great job. I thought that this was very well written. And I will start with what he said at the beginning. The most important news in the crypto space today is the gigantic IPO that Bitmain Tech intends to complete this year. And the big situation with this, actually, I will just, okay, not Tone, to Rodolfo, I'll switch it back to you. We have Bitmain Cash. So can you demystify what's happening with all of this craziness that happened over the weekend, really?
I'll be short. I mean, it's just that they completely poo-pooed their IPO. I mean, between the initial announcement, which was an accidental translation mistake, so that they got the first hype with a much higher numbers, which was just hilarious. And then, I mean, oh, that was painful too. Like, they sold most of their Bitcoin for Bcash, and this is just sort of like I mean, Bcash is essentially suckers, useful idiots. That's all that there is left there. I mean, people really are starting to double down on the stupidity just because they want to save face. But wow, this is so stupid, and people are losing so much money, and Bitmain is a hole. Guys, you guys talk about it. I just, to me, it's just a bunch of, it's just garbage.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the story is just how much, and why it's called Bitmain Cash, is that they were holding of Bcash and bleeding from it. And as we know, an IPO is to raise cash, and this was supposed to be one of the biggest IPOs pretty much ever. Giacomo, Bitmain Cash, what do you think about this story?
It's nice because it shows that ultimately it's impossible when people have these conspiracy theories about people manipulating prices forever. So Bitcoin is going up, Bitcoin is going down. This is because of manipulation. Actually, you cannot actively manipulate the market against the trend forever without being crushed by your action. Maybe if you have a nation state backing you up, you can go on for very, very long with a lot of resources. But ultimately, in order to hide a real market trend, you have to spend a lot of money. So in order to pump a Bitcoin, Bitmain had to spend a lot of money, and ultimately, there is nothing magic in the markets where you can just pump and dump forever without ever being caught in what you're doing. Pump and dumps are easy to do in very, very short time periods, basically scamming the final buyers, and with higher informational asymmetry, and with very, very illiquid markets. When you have a liquid market, spread out information, you cannot go on forever manipulating the market against the trend. Indeed, there was a lot of loss that Bitmain had. It's very. I think this story is very nice because now Bitmain is in this kind of paradox in which, in order to show that their move in order to try to control Bitcoin with the block size drama, and in order to they attempt to replace Bitcoin with Bcash was meaningful, they have to continue to put resources into it, because they have to show the investors that their move was not completely stupid. But in order to not get wrecked completely, they will have to let this operation go sooner or later, because potentially it could consume all the resources if they wanted to just pump a Bcash indefinitely. Also, if they want to show the investors, and this is very nice because it emerges from the numbers, if they want to show their investor that they control Bcash as a possible replacement of Bitcoin, they have to show the investor how much hash rate they have, so how much Bcash is centralized. But when they show that Bcash is centralized, they are also ultimately showing that Bcash is completely useless as a cryptocurrency. So there is a continuous paradox in this. If you want to make money because you control Bitcoin, you have to show something which is ultimately defeating yourself in a way. So Bitmain is dangerous, what you want, but this is a very it's a very educational experiment with this Bitmain operation.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Rodolfo, did you have a follow-up?
Sure. I mean, Giacomo explained perfectly. The key here is this, these guys wanted to make this shit fork on Bitcoin, and then nobody used it, right? So then what do you do if nobody's using? Well, if you're going to still try to do this scam, you have to keep on buying your own coin to maintain the price. They were essentially team keep price up Bcash. So they kept on buying all this Bcash to keep the price up. But eventually you run out of money. Even if you have, probably free loans from the Chinese government, eventually you run out of money. And then what do? Well, you try to IPO if this works out, or you're going to have to turn off the lights and sell your gear. It's unlike fiat, you can't print more Bitcoin. You cannot cheat the market. This is not QE. It is finite. It's just the irony of this story is just too delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I don't understand how they didn't think that they wouldn't have to disclose this as they are doing an IPO, and I think it is on the Hang Seng. So delicious is a good word for it. Delicious is a good word, and just also shows more ties, to how Bitmain and Bcash are just pretty married. All right, I am going to move to the last story. Tone.
Yes.
Ready? All right.
Well, wait, I didn't even comment on that one.
Please do. Please do. I didn't know if you were dealing with gambling there. So yes, Bitmain Cash.
Yeah, if you scroll down to tweet number 8, I think number 7 or 8, it was a really, really good one. I think number 8, yeah.
Right, exactly. Bitmain is sitting on paper losses of hundreds of millions of dollars from this botched trade. But even worse, they have no ability to exit their billion-dollar position in Bcash without a complete collapse in its price.
Right, and that's what the guys just explained as well. And Bitmain is going to have a problem. They're going IPO. I mean, they're going to be able to unload their whole company on unqualified investors, but at least in a legal way, which I'm okay with. Those that don't. All of this information is public, by the way. And the reason why we know all of this is because they're going IPO, so they have to disclose a lot more information, which is how this information came out. We all knew that very rich and powerful people were supporting Bcash because it made no sense economically, technologically, in any way, shape, or form. And this is why no company will ever be able to rule anything, right? I mean, companies come and go. The biggest companies from 100 years ago barely exist today. And the biggest companies from today will barely exist 100 years from now. I mean, Amazon and Google are doing a pretty good job, staying at the top. We will see how long they can do that. But Bitmain's number is running out. I mean, in 5 years from now, I don't expect Bitmain to be on top of the leaderboard in their space of chip manufacturing. I think they will be taken over in that regard, and because of stupid decisions like this, I think this is going to cost them big time. And eventually, Jihan and Roger Ver are going to break up, and he's going to dump the Bcash position and salvage what he can. All currency pegs break, and right now, Bcash is pegged and supported by just a handful of people.
Absolutely, and it's pretty evident here. So moving to decentralized crypto exchanges can solve fake volumes and malpractices. This is pretty interesting. So these researchers discovered that 3 digital asset exchanges lacked active users, traffic, social media engagement, and they were saying the level of activity on the exchange was not sufficient to justify the unrealistically large volumes. So, we've kind of guessed at this before. They're also saying that it's very indicative of wash trading and bots and other manipulative tactics in an attempt to bulk up volumes. People speculate on this. People talk about this. Tone, if I could throw this back to you, What did you think when you read this story?
I mean, it's the same thing. Like, people keep talking about decentralized exchanges. I cannot see how they are going to function. It's just another dream. Give me the maximum amount of money so I can spend the rest of my life working on a project that will probably not succeed, like MadeSafe, you know? So it's completely silly. They explain in the article why they don't work. They don't work for the same reason that centralized exchanges need to create fake volume so people know that they exist. And what do you think is going to happen to your decentralized exchange? In order for you to pump your decentralized exchange and promote it, you have to create fake volume and make it relevant. Like, it's a chicken and egg situation. All of these decentralized exchanges are going to compete with each other. There is no customer service unless it's centralized. Like, like the whole concept of a decentralized exchange just doesn't make sense, because there's no profit there other than collecting money from unqualified investors for you to have a job. And if you build it on your own, how are you going to get the mass adoption of people using your decentralized exchange? Like, these things are centralized. Like, they have to be centralized. The only time it makes sense is when you're trading completely digital things that have nothing to do with real world stuff. So sure, there might be a need for a decentralized exchange, crypto to crypto. But if you watch this show, you know that all other crypto other than Bitcoin is going to go away. So you are making all of this effort to build something that is very, very complicated, grossly inefficient, or will be inefficient. And the day you'll probably complete it is the day there will be no more shitcoins and for people to trade. And anytime you are going to be dealing with something that has reality in the physical realm, even stock has, connection to the company itself, which is like, stock might be virtual, but at the end of the day, it's physical. No one is dumb enough to leave their stock on a decentralized exchange, because when there is a bug on a decentralized exchange, who is incentivized to fix this bug? Now we get to, well, the only way to incentivize these people is to have a native currency where they're incentivized in the currency of the blockchain, like Bitcoin. And these people don't realize that this doesn't, like, economically work for things other than Bitcoin. Your decentralized exchange is going to have all the downside of decentralization with zero upside of decentralization.
Thanks, Tone. Giacomo, what do you think of the piece? And also, are you surprised that some of these exchanges are manipulating situations and playing with some games?
No, well, I'm not surprised. This is the kind of industry we are in, and there is a lot of problems. I mean, I remember when the price monitoring websites were all checking against the Chinese zero fee exchanges with clearly manipulated volumes, and how it changed when people stopped to look at zero fee exchanges, and when China eventually basically shut down the zero fee exchanges. So there is a lot of manipulation going on, and there are a lot of use cases in which you want to check against the price automatically. For example, your wallet, your Bitcoin wallet, when you do the conversion to send money, you want to check against some exchange rate, and you want to do that automatically, not manually. And so when you automatize something like that, you could open up an attack surface in which somebody else fakes some market rate in order to attack. I mean, there is some kind of attack vector there. So having a fair market rate and volume estimation would be nice. So while I completely agree with Tone about this specific fake decentralized exchange, because you don't create a decentralized protocol with a centralized company with a spokesperson answering to journalists. It doesn't work that way. So decentralized stuff is a scam always. But I disagree with Tone partially about real decentralized exchanges. Of course, what he says about the problems, the costs, is absolutely true. When you create a decentralized system, the decentralized system has a lot of frictions and costs. It doesn't save money or time. It increases the barriers, the friction, the costs, and the inefficiencies. So everything decentralized is less efficient than that centralized thing, if we mean decentralized in the Bitcoin sense. So Ton was pointing, of course, there are a lot of technical inefficiencies like time and transaction cost in order to do atomic swap. Of course, you can get something cheaper and faster with Lightning Network atomic swaps, but it's still more expensive and still more complex than doing that with a centralized counterparty. So you lose time and money. Also, as Ton was pointing out, there are a lot of problems with business model. With the centralized exchanges, you have a reason to have customer support, tickets, marketing, incentives to build a better platform because you have a company making profits. When you have a decentralized open platform like Bitcoin itself, incentives are more tricky. Why are core developers developing Bitcoin? Sure, because maybe they are Bitcoin hodlers, but the incentives are less clear and less easy to manage. So decentralized platform have a lot of challenges more instead compared to centralized platform. I do think so. The bottom line is that we will use the centralized exchanges only if, in exchange for all the problems that they create, they will provide a lot of advantage over centralized one. I think that advantage will be regarding regulation, KYC, AML. The centralized exchanges will be able to stay basically free, unlike centralized exchange that will have to submit to the KYC mafia. Of course, Tone objection is that you can do that only when you have crypto against crypto. But I do think that we, in the future, it's possible that we will have crypto against crypto in a meaningful way, not just for altcoins, which are basically all scams, but for crypto collectibles, maybe in the far future, crypto shares, and maybe crypto representative of fiat that like Tether, but done better, that can be used in order to separate the conversion, let's say the blockchainization part from the trading part. So you just have a company which gets dollars in order to give you back crypto dollars, which is not an exchange. So you can maybe manage that in a smart way, legally speaking. And then you move the exchange part into the centralized exchange. That's also what we are trying to modelize in RGB. So I'm less skeptical about that. Of course, everything Tom said about the costs is absolutely true. If you want to have the same services provided by a centralized exchange with the same limitation, then you should go with a centralized exchange.
You're muted.
Okay, unmuted. And finishing this up really quickly, what are your final thoughts? And just one quick last thought, following up on Giacomo. Why couldn't decentralized exchanges work better with better tech?
So let me just give you a quick roadmap. Like, I think that we're gonna have a lot more alts, a lot more crap, and a lot more scams in the very near future. It's gonna get even worse, and then it's gonna get better when everybody realizes they're all gonna lose their money, and then everybody goes back to Bitcoin. In the more further future. But the thing is, decentralized exchanges are, they can completely be solved with better tech, better UI. They won't feel like a decentralized exchange, right? And the key here is censorship and state control. So there won't be any KYC, there won't be any AML, there won't be anything. And so people are going to be willing to use other tools, like maybe some shitcoin or maybe Tether or something, as a way of sort of going around fiat. Yes, it'll be more convoluted, but with the right solution, you could make it feel like it is kind of like a centralized exchange. That's, to me, like the key here. I think that is the future. We will see those things. So yeah, that's. I know Tone has to fly, so I'll keep it short.
Thanks, Rodolfo. Tone, TA, we'll get you out the door.
Yeah, so I had to, I can't fly out tomorrow, because if I fly out tomorrow, then I miss my presentation at the event tomorrow. So I changed my flight to be even earlier. So I have 5 minutes with TA, and then I got to rush to the airport 2 hours before I planned. So that's not good. Anyway, tonebase.com, you can go see that. So here's what's going on this chart. So the weekly chart, we are having that bounce. It's a very, very tricky environment. In the last video, I talked about how this was a complete no trade zone. Here's the weekly chart. We started off a new week. We are just at the bottom of the triangle. So ideally, it would be nice to go to near the top of the triangle to 70 to 7,000, 7,500. It's going to be hard to get that high. Now, the conflict here is between the one-day chart and the 12-hour chart. I expected the one-day chart to have a 1 to 4 day dead cat bounce, taking us to the $7,000 vicinity. We started off on that track. Then we had a pretty bad day a couple of days ago. And for the last 3 days, we've been kind of hovering in this area. And I talked extensively about how the 12-hour chart was in conflict with the daily chart, which created all of these problems. The 12-hour chart was just exhausted. We bottomed on the 8 candle. It was a reversal candle. We had the 9 candle that kicked us all the way up. And now we're still rebounding up a little bit. Now, this reversal from the 12-hour 9 is coming to an end fairly quickly right now. So unless the 9 is going to give us a 9 to the upside, this rebound has ended. Now, the 1 to 4 day rebound from the daily chart, that also has ended. Rodolfo, you mind muting, please?
Oh.
Sorry, here your keyboard. Now, the 1 to 4 day correction from the daily chart is also coming to an end, minus this one candle. So right now, we are nearing the end of this weird zone. If we can break out above 6,500 on a 12-hour closing basis, then there could be some life to go back up to 7. Otherwise, we are ready to turn the corner to go back down. Still a little too early to tell. Something weird happened here on Bitfinex on a 4-hour chart. That's a weird gap going on. Maybe they froze trading or something. You did have your 9 on a 4-hour chart, mark the bottom, and we've caught up to the moving average, and it's ready to call it a day. Same thing on the hourly chart. The hourly chart made it to a 9 and looks like that's as far as it wants to go. I still call this a no trade zone. Above like 65, 65.50, we can get another pop to 7. But other than that, I would wait for the price to go back below 6,200. And if we go back below 6,200, I think this dead cat bounce is pretty much over. Stock market just opened another week. Still looks good. I remain bullish the stock market. That was just, a 1-day scare, not a big deal. Gold is really interesting. Gold is finally reached its weekly 9. It was a 9 following a 9. So now we're playing the countdown. I would not expect too much of a rebound here off of this 9 unless it turns into a reversal candle. Look for the countdown to go down to 13. That's the long-term goal. By the way, I took a look at silver, long-term silver, just randomly the other day. And look how close it reminds us to Bitcoin. So I'm just going to throw this out here for people to do some research. Maybe Tyler and I will talk about it later. Look, it dropped quickly, made a low. Then it made a lower close, but a higher intra-week low. That's the same situation Bitcoin had from February into April. And then in June, Bitcoin had a prolonged low with a lower closing low and a lower intra-week low. And that's exactly what happened to silver. And then it bounced, and then it made this triangle, and then it completely collapsed. So this is the situation I am looking at right now for Bitcoin. To me, Bitcoin stock is in like maybe this area here near the bottom of this little triangle is what silver is doing, and then it completely dropped. So I'm looking for that. All right, I'm going to run to the airport so I can make chain exchange. And that's it for me, guys. If you like to support, please check out the affiliate section of tonebase.com. We're going to update it this week. And I have since added my Amazon shopping list for all my tech gear. So go ahead and check those out as well. Thanks, guys. I'm going to end screen share and we can say our goodbyes.
Bye, everybody. Giacomo.
Bye, guys. See you tomorrow.
Rodolfo.
Take care. See you tomorrow.
Bye, guys. Bye, guys.
Have a nice
Bye,
flight.
everybody.